Hello, welcome, bienvenidos, benvindos, tervetuloa, willkommen. I will use my glass because this is not possible. My name is Laura Gazzotti. I am the art director of Colibri Festivali. For those of you who don't know much about Colibri, this festival is a new model from an immigrant community perspective and offer children and their families the opportunity to experience, enjoy, and value the arts, science, culture, increasing their well-being. Today, I want to welcome all of you. Thank you to be here to our panel, Children, Culture, and Diversity, Pushing Limits. This discussion is part of a large project named Building Spaces of Encounters as a tool of more socially sustainable, diverse, and accessible children culture, produced by our association, Culturiquescus Niños, and supported by Moni Art Group. This panel was born out in the context of the training sessions of Project ABAUS on becoming an agent in the field of art and culture in Finland, implemented by Culture for All, Corporate, and Globe Art Point. This panel is the opening event of our 9th edition of Colibri Festivali. Why to include a discussion about diversity in children culture within the scope of Colibri? First, because we are working hard to promote children culture in Finland to a new standard, learning from alongside of all of you, each of us in our role and responsibilities. Also, we can't forget that Colibri is organized by an immigrant community in Finland, in this case, the Spanish and Portuguese speaking community, which makes it a one-of-kind festival in the Nordic countries. That's one of our goals, having our community create opportunities for cultural engagement for all families, regardless of their configuration, race, background, etc. Colibri would not boast diversity without accessibility. There are no linguistic barriers to enjoy our program. The 99% of our artists, scientists, creators, and activists are not originally from Finland, and they speak multiple languages. Also, the festival is completely free and hosted by public institutions as libraries and cultural centers here in Helsinki and UNESCO. Last but not least, participation in Colibri helps children understand that their heritage languages are not a secret to use only at home. Now, the next question is, why discuss diversity with the Children Cultural Initiative, our panel made global today? Many studies have shown that art and culture activities strengthen cultural capital of children while supporting their identities and capacity to actively participate in society. Well, if art and culture play such a strong role in allowing children to reach their full potential, it's extremely important that all children have access to high quality and diverse cultural offering. But how we increase diversity, quality, and accessibility in these activities? That is what our panel intends to address here today. Our guests are cultural workers that play a key role in pushing the limit of children's culture and education, working actively to overcome the many challenges. They will share with us today best practices, lesson learning, and, of course, new ideas and new challenges. This is a starting point in our big discussion that involves the community, cultural workers, and decision makers in the public and third sectors. Finally, I would like to thank all of you to participate in this panel and celebrated with us the 5th anniversary of Colibri Festivali and the first edition of Festival. Big thanks also to our panel and our host today, Kaisa, thank you, Katia, Global Arpon, Kultur for All, Svenska Kulturfonden, and Moni Haley. And now, let me introduce our moderator, Arlene Tucker. Arlene is an artist, an educator, and diversity agent as me. Thank you. Thank you very much, and enjoy the panel.
Thank you very much for that great introduction. And first of all, thank you, Laura, and everybody at Colibri Festival for putting this together and giving us space to discuss. I will bring the microphone closer. So we will have a discussion all together, but this is inclusive. So if anybody in the audience who are participating remotely would like to ask a question, put it in the chat, and at the end of the discussion, we can then answer the questions. So you don't need to wait till the end to get it out of your mind what's on. But first, I'd like to introduce Pirjetta Mulari, who has been working at Anantalo, the Children's Arts Center in Helsinki since 2016. First as a head cultural producer and now as the acting director. As Anantalo's acting director, she is responsible for the art direction, programming, and projects of the organization, having diversity as an intrinsic value. From 2005 to 2016, she worked as the manager for international affairs at Dance Info Finland. And today she is wearing a black cardigan, and there are pink roses on the front and a brown scarf. And she has glasses. And then we have Ines Montalval, who has been based in Helsinki since the beginning of 2017 and has skills in biology and illustration. She has experienced design in Eureka, the Finnish Science Center. With a degree in biology and a passion for art, she combines both as she explores cross-disciplinary approaches, storytelling, illustration, and innovative ways to create meaningful experiences. All this comes from an enthusiastic and a dreamy way of being. And her dreaminess is coming out today in a green dress and black tights with sneakers and dangly earrings and glasses. Brown hair. And here next in line we have Analia Kahoni Savolainen, is a doctoral researcher at Sibelius Academy. She is a singer, music educator, and a singing teacher. She has extensive experience teaching singing to children of different nationalities and ages, not only in Finland, but also in Latin America, North America, and Australia. Her research project, as part of the Academy of Finland's Strategic Research Council Research Initiative Arts Equal, examines the potential of singing in the construction of children's individual and social identity in the context of culturally diverse Finnish schools. And she has black curly hair, it's long, and she's wearing a black cardigan, and her dress has black, white, and green flowers and leaves, and sparkly earrings, dangles. And next to me is Katia Suomalainen Pedrosa. She is half Portuguese and half Finnish. She's been working as director of Cultural Center Kaisa in Helsinki since 2016. Katia has been working on diversity issues for years, especially from the perspective of the arts and culture field. In its various activities, the Cultural Center Kaisa wants to reflect the diversity of Helsinki residents and strives in various ways to improve physical and mental accessibility and safety. And she is wearing a yellow dress with, what are they called? The balloons that fly in the sky.
I would go with dots, but okay.
And black tights, yellow sneakers to match with her dress, and black rimmed glasses. Lovely. Thank you for being here. I'm going to throw out a really big first question for us to dive into, which is, how do you feel, or do you feel, that institutions currently develop spaces that offer intercultural dialogues between children and their families that are not living in a diverse cultural and linguistic environment with, for example, new second, third generation immigrants? Maybe we can touch on how and what kind of spaces we see these programs if they exist. Henrietta, would you like to start?
Sure. I think that in many of the institutions there is really will to create the spaces, but I think that the first or one of the things are, first of all, how to reach the people that we would like to see in the institutions, and also accessibility in many ways. And I was thinking that what would be a good example of Anlantalo. And it is actually our art clinic that happens every Monday. That's designed for children and adults between children between 3 to 6 years, and adults who happen to be at home for some reason. So they are out of the kind of education system in Finland. And it has been going on now for 11 years. And it's a non-stop workshop on Mondays where you don't need to register, you just come in. And it seems that we have a very diverse participatory group that also differs from Monday to Monday. And it seems that, Finnish might be a minor language there. And how to reach people, well, I think the word of mouth goes quite well there, and it's much more about something else than just art. There's always a different theme around.
Okay. Where is there a shelf there?
Work together. So it's
okay.
Also about doing something together, communicating, and so on. But to create these kind of spaces is about feeling safe in the environment that you are. It's about educators that understand a lot about diversity, not only the actual art. You can actually find themes that work on diverse communities. So I would think that the main thing for many things is resources. It needs time, planning, and people who can actually make these spaces. And it is possible, and there's actually a lot of expertise in this nowadays, as you can see, art equal the research and so on. And I think that you always can learn more. So I'm always quite humble in in this question of diversity, because I don't think that you can ever know everything.
And maybe, well, for me, coming from a place of not wanting to assume, maybe you can just share your thoughts on what is it to be diverse, or what does that look like?
This is I don't want to make distinctions as such. If you think of things like, what is normal and so on, diverse can be anything. It can look many things. It can be people from different backgrounds. It can be people from with different identities. It's possibilities, I would say, more than anything else.
Ines, you look like you want to say something. Maybe.
I always want to say something. So, yes, while you were speaking, I was thinking about this idea of space that you mentioned when you posed the question. And for me, I would focus on the space itself and how it can be welcoming. And I think that would be the aim for most institutions. And I'm working in a science center where usually in science centers and science museums, you might get a lot of people thinking that maybe this is not for me because of the science already. So that if I go there with my kids and there's some physics or something that I can't really explain, then I will feel dumb and I don't want to feel that in front of my kids. And that's already something that we need to overcome. But then when we talk about diversity, then we should definitely pay attention about this welcoming issue. So people need to feel welcome there. They need to feel like they kind of own the place and then it's their place too. So this brings us to community building, for example. And I think that this will be a growing, or it is here already, but it will grow even more, the issue of are we actually, what communities we are reaching, and are we actually reaching our community, not just the people around us. For example, at Heureka, it's located in Vantaa, and of course, a lot of people go there and they need to go there on purpose, but it's also important to be surrounded by the community there and so that other groups of people can also feel that they can go there despite of language or whatever background we are talking about. So I think for me, in terms of what organizations can do for the space itself, it's creating this sense of belonging.
So maybe we go. This is very nice, and it's wonderful to be here and to hear these ideas, which resonate so much with my experiences and feelings and thoughts. So, and I was thinking institutions and the will to do, it's there, as you said. And this project, for instance, Arts Equal, in which I'm part, there are many things, interventions that were done in schools and in hospitals, and there are many things. So now the implementation, now what to do with that is what actually we want to continue with that. So we know that this works well, we know that we can do this, and then how to do it. So of course, financial issues and many organizational things are necessary, and so that's right, it takes time, but the good intentions and the good work is in progress, I think. And also there are many other things in the University of the Arts, for instance, master's degrees in global music, and there are many things So I think things are happening, and this is good. It will take time, yes, but we can actually contribute at the same time, doing what we can. And for instance, in my particular experience is that, okay, researchers are always considered that, they are reading and writing and doing nothing else. And that's not the idea here. Actually, in this project, we actually try to be also active in the society, to be active in a way. And this connects so much with my own experiences as immigrant in Finland, because if you do not know, I'm originally from Argentina. And so it's a great experience what we live as foreign artists, as foreign teachers, as foreign people here in Finland. It's a process. We could tell a lot probably about how we live that process. It's not the same at the beginning, it's not the same in the middle, it's not the same, and it will not be the same in 10 years more or one. So that is also something that connects us, I think, and also gives us the passion to work towards this accessibility, equality, because we feel it so inside.
Maybe you can give an example of how you have created an intercultural dialogue, for example, with your research project or also from personal experience.
Yes. Well, I can tell a little bit about my work as a teacher, as a singing teacher, because I started my studio, and at that time, so let's say 13 years ago, I didn't speak any Finnish, and my English was okay, well, there. So it was hard to start. And so I started, taking students, teaching in English, teaching in Spanish. And that brought a very interesting, beautiful community. So a very rich community. Then when I learned Finnish, I started to teach in Finnish also. And so we actually have today a beautiful community where we sing together, where we share the energy of the music. And we have completely different backgrounds. And then it's great to share because the family from Australia is sharing their songs, and they are sharing much more than the song. They are sharing the meaning of the song. They are sharing the context, where they learn it, what it means for them. And then we are all there. And then I teach so much Argentinian music, and they love it because I think the secret is that they can connect with that music through these experiences. So the music is not something so, so it's not far away. It comes closer and unites us. So this is an interesting example, I think. Yeah.
So with you, it's through music and song, and at Panelist, it's through different art forms. And with the sciences, maybe you can give an example, because I'm so curious how that I mean, I've been there, but maybe you can give an example.
So you mean an example on how it can actually bring people together?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we think, for example, in the current context, science is having a lot of relevance because people are a bit unclear on what information to trust, for example. And that can be something that we can, of course, use in a way that we feel that people will bond more. But in practice, in a science center, the idea is really about being engaged in something so that people are, there's a term that we use that everyone will understand, flow. And the idea is that you don't really realize that the time is passing by and exactly what you are, because you are engaged in something. And it's really about, if you think about it, it's really about evoking emotions. So sometimes people think, okay, it's about learning or teaching, and I don't believe it's about that. So maybe with the music, it's not so much about like teaching the music per se, but more about how people connect through the music. And with science happens exactly the same with music and art. And I think that's also the fascinating thing of working with science too, and how it can connect to music and through art and reach even more people if all of these areas work together and if we don't see it so differently. Yeah. So that would be my take on
And Katja?
Well, first of all, so nice that you asked me to come here, even though Kaisa is not only doing things with children, but of course one of the important, and I think maybe even the most important audience, because children become adults at some point, so we really need them in many, many ways. First of all, as you mentioned already when you just said a few words about Kaisa, so for us, the main point, as already Ines had said, that we have to begin from the beginning, is that everyone that comes to our house has to feel totally comfortable. So this is, I think, not only about children, it's about everyone. And especially with Pirjetta, well, we are under the Helsinki city government, so meaning that we are serving each Helsinkian. So we have not only the duty, but also you guys paying the taxes make us the duty that we have to serve all. So we cannot, and especially when, and I know of course that we are focusing today quite much on in terms of linguistics, quite much, but here at Kaisa we cannot separate it because we kind of have an intersectional approachment to everything we do, thinking that one person, you can be a child or any individual that has or can have multiple different identities. So in some way we have to be very aware of all the identities. We cannot say that, okay, we are doing just this for this type of identity. So in some ways this is very complex, but in some ways very simple, because then it means when you are asking, for example, Pirjetta, about what is diversity, well, each of us is diversity. So in that sense, it's very simple, but it's for us serving and trying to make all kinds of contents, it's not that easy. But of course, I can get at least one or two examples. I don't know, we have, I think, many, but thinking especially in this question that if we can provide this intercultural, especially for those who are not for some reason in this environment, which I have to say in terms of Helsinki city, that the schools more and more already have some kind of diversity depending on the area. So in that sense, I think that the children nowadays are very more or less aware of the differences than we are. So I think we adults are doing much more to put up the differences than the children itself. But of course, we also realize that are some people that still don't understand that we have all these equal differences. And I would also say that about your clinics, we also have the toddlers on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it was very interesting. We made a very small survey last spring, I think. And so there are families coming, and the families, you can say that it can be dads, mothers, whoever, with the toddler. The toddler has to come, but who comes with the toddler, it's the same for us. But it's very interesting that we made a survey that are people coming all around from Helsinki and out of Helsinki, and just to make art with the children. And the idea is that you just don't come and put your child there, but you have yourself to be engaged. And it was very interesting, I think, spring, with this Corona thing, I've been already quite, I don't remember anymore what is spring and what is last year. So let's say spring, that, that for example, there was this dad community that was formed here, because for some reason many of the dads were at home with the children and they started to come here and make some art, and all of them had different backgrounds. And because in that toddlers workshop, also for us, it's also this ongoing, and you can, well, because it's, art, so in the sense that you don't need the language that much. So for some reason now there is a dad community that started here, and it was really interesting to see how important this is to make others acquainted with each other. Another one, which I really hope that Virjat at some point is going to talk a bit more about, because Anantalo is the expert there, is the 5x2 courses. So we are giving, and I'm sure, I think you have worked with it also, yeah. So when we are working with schools, for example, in Kaisa, we started this week working with elementary schools. So one, for those who don't know what is 5x2, so one class comes for 5 times to the same course, art course, and they divide the class in 3 different art forms. And especially in Kaisa, our idea has been all the time that we really want that all the teachers, or almost all the teachers, in some way are not parts of the majority, meaning that many times they can have a different background, maybe different language and so on, and also even in some way look different. And the idea is not only to say that, okay, now you have your multiculturalism, not that, we are just not ticking boxes, it's not our idea, and we don't even say it out loud. But for the children, many of them have in some way related to the teacher, like, oh yeah, also my mom doesn't speak that well Finnish. So, and it's okay that your teacher, which is now expert, that you have an expert now that has a different maybe language and so on, which you still don't see at schools. But at the same time, also the kids that don't have any relation with different minorities, that they, so this is okay, because still we have the problem of representation, which I hope that we are going to talk at some point more. Now I'm going to stop, but in the sense that the idea also for the kids living in the majority, let's say, that they also understand that, okay, so the teacher with a different background or this strange Finnish accent, she also can be an expert, she also can be authority, which you still don't see in many schools or in many professions. So I would say through this, we try to, at least in some way, support the intercultural dialogue. Okay, now I'm done.
No, thank you for bringing that up, because you touch on a very personal subject with me as an educator, and my experience with students when the things that they choose to share with me. Exactly that, like, oh, my mom speaks Finnish like you do, or they share something about themselves. I remember one time a child, when I was doing my Finnish word practice at Anadolu, a kid came to me and he whispered in my ear, "I'm from Turkey." Lovely, great. So it's thank you for recognizing that. Yeah. Would you like to add anything because Katya mentioned Anadolu's 5x2?
Yeah, I think that's well, I have to say that comes to sort of even people's rights issue in Finland, that every person in Finland should have the right to culture, every child has that. Our regional politics are fantastic in that way. So in Helsinki we have 5x2, that every child has the right for arts within school. And thank you for bringing this up in here, because 5x2 is a very old concept. I mean, Anantalo was formed in 87, and the 5x2 has got on the board quite soon. And we have had a lot of discussions with our artist teachers about the diversity of children nowadays. And it's interesting to talk about diversity within the city college, because we can actually see the diversity of Helsinki, because every school kid actually comes through. And then we come to the fact that are we creating a safe and comfortable space for all the children that come? They come with their teacher, but actually the teacher will leave them with our artist teacher. So they have a very different communication with the artist teacher than their own teacher. So many times the teachers might say, when we ask for feedback, that the kids are actually acting very differently with the artist teacher than at school. So it creates a different, maybe hopefully an environment without some prejudices. Representation is something that we think a lot, because at the moment in our artist teacher staff is quite Finnish in that sense, but we realize that. What I find wonderful with art is the non-verbality in a sense that it doesn't really matter, what you speak or so children with really not very good Finnish can actually be in our art classes quite freely. One thing that we have had actually people from different backgrounds as assistants in our exhibitions, for instance. And it's fantastic when a child with Russian or Farsi or Persian as their first language actually sees a person that is from his or her own background. So yes, but anyways, I think Baptides 2 is a wonderful service for all Helsinki, and we're actually making a bit of research now how we are reaching, and we're trying to reach. I'm a bit afraid that there might be schools that we don't reach out as well as we should, but we're working on it. Yes.
Something. So, because you were referring to teachers, and so I think it's a key for teacher education. So, if we think about schools, the diverse schools we have today, because yes, we have diverse schools, so they are not coming in the future; they are today. Yeah, at least in Helsinki, Vantaa in the capital area. So, class teachers also need to know how to handle this. So, for instance, in primary school, the first graders, let's say, they will have music or arts with the class teacher. So they also need to know how to handle this diversity, because it's new thing for them. I mean, and this is something that in this particular point, I'm now referring to something I got in my data when I was interviewing teachers and also children. So later on, I can tell you more about this, but I had the wonderful opportunity. I'm very grateful for this, to interview 7-year-old children in culturally diverse school. So we need to listen more, I think, also to the teachers, because they brought these kind of challenges, but also the children.
Also add comments then. Thinking, of course, this exposure to diversity in teachers is really important, but I'm also thinking about these kids that are immigrants or sons and daughters of immigrants, that they are exposed to people that are also immigrants, and that they are having relevant roles in society, because they are kids, so they're growing, they're looking for role models, even if they don't know that. But if they if they don't have like, because sometimes in their mind there's things like, maybe I can't do this, maybe I can have a job as a scientist here because I don't speak Finnish, and that's not true. Maybe I can't work at a science center, or maybe I can't be running a cultural center. And if they are in contact with people that are doing this kind of things too, then a whole other spectrum of opportunities might be presented to them, and might increase their confidence also, and they won't have to, like, come and whisper, I am, and they would own this. And I think that with Nino, the association, I think it's one of their like key pillars also, and I think that's really important, so that, as Laura was saying, that it's not something that it's the secret that you have at home, the language that you only speak at home, and that you realize that you can thrive in Finland, and that being in Finland doesn't mean that you're Finnish.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm thinking about right now is just awareness of where you are, your environment, and the relationships between all of these pieces. And then going off of what you had said, something that came into my mind regarding this awareness, but explicit and implicit information. So if you guys could maybe talk about that from your experiences or your workspaces. Yeah.
I kind of think I know what you're talking about, in the sense that even though we are saying that we are doing this work and still we don't say it, I think this is what you mean. And I think it's also very important because when you are also, a part of any minority, because once more we work with all minorities, you also in some way are asked to bury your background, even though if you don't want your background to be with yourself. So in that sense, that's why, for example, in our 5x2, we are not doing like courses that are, this is, for example, let me try to think one, architecture from Bosnia because our teacher is from Bosnia. That is not the point. And I because I still feel, and I've been working before with even more with the same questions in my previous job in Cassandra, which we were doing with the same. And there we could really feel many times that many schools are still so, they still don't know how to deal with these matters. So they want to tick the box. They want to, and many times still I think to guys that they're doing the same, and we have some phone calls saying that, okay, so we need now this multicultural day, just come here and tick the box and everything is okay. And of course it's not like that. So that's why we try not to all the time underline it. We want that our audiences, not only our children audiences, but all our audience, when they come here, they can realize by themselves these questions. So we are not saying that you are wrong and we are not pointing the finger, because I think that is not a way also how to get people to understand better or to even learn new things. I don't know if this in any way answered what you were thinking about. Maybe others have better answers.
I'm not sure if this refers to you.
Take it where you want to go.
Let's go with the flow.
Okay. I take the opportunity because we spoke about this creating a space, a safe space, participation, community. It's beautiful. And I was thinking participation and in which ways. So how children how this space is settled in a way that children feel free to participate with who they are. So, as who they are. So, there's a beautiful texts and books from Gers Biesta, and he speaks about a sense of presence. So, you are really there because it's you. So, if they feel that at school, if they feel that in the community, if they feel that they really are there, then it's good. If they feel that they are, they are not completely comfortable, they are kind of feeling that something is not good enough, then it's not good. So this space, I really think that we need to promote how to do it, yes, but it's about empathy also, it's teachers' education, it's community education, it's societal change, but it's happening. It's happening. If I think about 13 years back, I think it changed a lot. So we should be happy for that. And then what you are doing, these kind of projects, and well, the University of the Arts, helping from the higher education point of view also. And I think, so that way of contribution. So I was thinking that participation, belonging, and then this term agency. So how the children feel that freedom so that they can really participate in agents in their own process of learning, of living, of participating in the societies. Just having that.
Yeah. Well, what kind of challenges have you encountered with different projects or initiatives? I mean, I'm looking at also to open this question up from the place of learning from our mistakes or what we could have done better. And
I think that what we have learned is that if we're talking about teaching art to children, for instance, it's so much about encountering the child and also, communication between the group of children that are there. And sometimes the artists, teachers might think that, they don't have enough tools for the interaction or creating the communication between children. So they feel that, they are educated as art teachers, but nobody actually taught them how to deal with these different, diverse problems. Or, children in general are quite active nowadays. So it's a very different environment than before. So maybe giving the experts or the art teacher experts the possibilities to really learn how to deal with different aspects of life. And art is a fantastic tool for society in many ways, because it's always about encountering something, whether it's encountering your own thoughts that you need to process, or whether it's encountering with a person. And sometimes I was actually talking to our Romanian graphic teacher, and she was teaching a very diverse group of kids. And she was saying that it's interesting to see a group of kids that when they have a common project as an art, piece of art, taken together, they actually kind of forget the other things. But they really concentrate on doing it, and she has a fantastic way of processing the kids. Yeah, that's all. So I think that what I can say in this matter is that you're never ready, and you really need to process. You need to have time to evaluate what has happened, and also give space to also other things than just the art.
mm-hmm. And it sounds like in this case as well, and you mentioned with training or supporting teachers and adults, because we're all in this together. So giving the tools and the space, but yeah. Thank you. Ines?
In answer to your question about learning from mistakes, I think that for that, we actually need to make mistakes. So, and making mistakes means that you tried something. And I think that's what's still missing in a lot of institutions from all sectors, arts, culture, science, everywhere. So I'm really glad that the name of this panel is Pushing the Limits, because I think we really need to push limits in that sense. And only when we do that, or then we'll learn from that too. And then we can, like when we're designing something, some experience, a science experience, an art experience, a cultural event, whatever it is, we need to take into consideration what Katia was mentioning, these identities that we have. And in science centers, we talk a lot about our visitors' identities, and it's something that has been used also for other type of museums. And it's really about this type of things that when, for example, when these identities were like first defined by John Falk, he defined 5 different identities. And it's interesting that later on, when they revisited these identities, they added like this cultural heritage and, you know, and this kind of idea of a pilgrim kind of identity that you go to visit someplace because it resonates with your roots, with your own culture and heritage. And for me, it's really interesting that that came later on. Like initially, they were just speaking if people were like an experience seeker or if they're a facilitator, and then this cultural identity came on also later. And of course, we all have these identities. And one day I might go to the science center because I really want to show my kid what dinosaurs were about. But another day I could just go there because I want to chill in the science center. So these are things that change. I mean, even during the day, we have different motivations for going to places and for doing things. And so going back to the challenges, of course, it's a big challenge to try to design some sort of experience for all these identities and all these motivations, but only if we try and we make it participatory, as Analia was saying, only if we try, then we can get results and feedback also, and build from that, like that we grow actually together with the users and our visitors or whoever we are aiming our efforts at.
I got tea from this. It's so nice to be here. So yes, because how to do it is the question, and the arts give us a great possibility. That's the arts have the power, and the arts help us because, as you said, the language issues, many things. Think about this. We perform together. So there's so much negotiation in that performance. So that's my turn, then it's your turn, then it's my second voice, but I need to hear yours, and I need to make it together. So then we will finish, let's see how we make the end. We need to make that kind of dialogue with music, and we need to also negotiate. Sometimes I don't like it that way, but let's see if we find something that, for everybody, and we make that performance together. So the performance is the group performance, and all the individualities are there playing a role. So the arts can help us to learn that, to practice that. And it is very interesting, mentioning again that educator and philosopher Biesta, that he says that art can help us to live in dialogue with the world, to learn and to practice that. Because if we do it in the arts, then we have a grasp of that, and then we can do it in other moments or in other things we are doing in our life. This is very interesting. And actually, when we think about identity, some also very important term, and the identity actually it's in continuous development, right? So we are learning from each other, and we are at the same time getting to know more about ourselves. Music helps us also. Sorry, I'm saying it's only about music examples, but you understand that it's the arts, but I can approach it from music. So music helps us in that. I know more about myself in the music and through the music, but I also learn about my others here when we make music together. And so it's something that is also affecting my own identity. And by the way, my agency, because agency is not about something that is just, individual, it also develops in the context, in the group. And so the power of the arts, I think, is really very, very important.
Katya, would you like to remark on
I don't know what to remark because now I was totally in the flow somewhere.
Sorry.
No, that was great because I still was stuck in the challenges and what to learn and especially when said that we are really trying to do this very safe place physically and mentally and for everyone. So it really means that we make a lot of mistakes, which is okay because as said we learn from them. But for example, one I was thinking that it was a very so small thing that I'm sure that many have realized, but we took a while to realize. For example, our gallery and every time when we are putting up a new exhibition, what is the hide? Where are you putting and how can a child really see it? Which is something that even never occurred to me, even as a child, and my parents really loved museums, which at some point I didn't that much. Nowadays I know how to appreciate, so thank to them, but in a sense that of course the child is not watching or even seeing the whatever art piece is there on the wall because it's so high. And then it's not only of course about children, we also have people with different kind of disabilities and being on wheelchairs and so on. So we had to go through this process here and trying all the time to take in attention to all of these very small things. And even today, I was even thinking we had a fantastic concert today by Colibri in the morning, and I was thinking if it was here, could the children look from our auditorium? Because all the time you have to think, how is the audience feeling, and are we giving everything we can to the audience? And of course, I know at some point you have some lines that or some, for example, money barriers that you just cannot overcome, but still trying to do that. So at least we are now learning a lot with all of this also, well, in all kinds of, is it children or adults or so on. So with human beings, how to do it a bit better and safer in many ways.
Mistakes are a good thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and then I see mistakes also as a way to create that safer space, like how to welcome mistakes as being part of the process. And you had mentioned agency and, for example, well, what is needed to create more agency or also to ensure inclusivity and an equitable society or programs?
I'm not sure if I can answer about programs or deep, but I can tell an example about the children I interviewed, and I encountered this interesting situation because I wanted to really make this my research very accessible. I translated into many languages, the information and all the consents, and this is a big job to do. But then I noticed also, so many children participated and everything, other children didn't participate. And it was also the situation that there were children in the music class who they didn't want to participate at all. Then the teachers commented that it was not only music, but in many other activities where they had to express themselves, let's say, show themselves. And then I started thinking, okay, but we need to also respect their silence. So we want them to participate, but if they are not ready. So it also takes some time, and that's first. They have the right to not participate, not to sing if they don't want. And actually there are some cultures in which singing, it's problematic. So this is in addition. But if they do not completely feel safe, and if they do not completely feel, the strength in their cultural identity, but also in their musical identity, they might choose not to join. Perhaps they join, in the distance, and then little by little, if they want, when they are ready, then they will do it. But if there's the space, so if we make the space, they have the accessibility, the possibility of joining when they are ready. If they don't have that, then they can't join. Yeah, go for it.
Because I think that we have actually that kind of project going on in Helsinki, Kulttuurin Ummila, which is a project that every child that is born in Helsinki from now on is invited. And of course the invitation comes through the parents, but we really try to reach hard, and we try to reach them through our Metropolitan social services, through hospitals and so on. And already there is now the information on the project is in 15 different languages. And I think that the project is really trying to reach different communities from different backgrounds, but this is a learning process how we actually do it. So you gave us a good challenge in that. And so, but how it works is that every year there's a different institution, cultural institution in Helsinki that is the art institution. So this year it's Helsinki City Orchestra. And children that are born are invited to the concerts from now on. And next year it will be at theaters in Helsinki and so on. So it's an ongoing project that is really for the equality of all the kids to actually have access to arts in Helsinki.
So how does that work? This is the first time I'm hearing of this project. So if you have a child, for example, in 2020, then you can sign up your child to visit these institutions or
Yes.
cultural institutions.
Yes.
Kind of a group song.
And there's every year different. Yeah, this is based on Helsinki City Orchestra had this kind of God institution project in 2000, where they invited all the children that were born in 2000 to be their God children in a way with their parents. And they were invited to the concerts throughout their childhood, actually. And they had another project until 2012, but then actually our former cultural director had the idea that this should be reached out to all the kids, So now we have a new project that has started now.
Amazing. Yeah.
I just, sorry. The this is very nice, and I understand it's very important. Of course, then we can think, so which parents will answer? And then, of course, as I said, for some cultural backgrounds or communities, which music, what kind of music is important, or what does it mean for them? So it can be very different for some families, right?
It's really important that you touched that question. That was the same question I have touched when this started, and it's not yet in any way ready, because, well, it's not an easy question, but I'm quite happy that we in the city of Helsinki have at least understood the question, that there is a problem that we need in some way to solve. But yeah, totally agree with you. And for example, one of my own proposals and of my thinking that, and now we go a bit far maybe, but well, let's go there. That, for example, when thinking about, of course, I understand that orchestra music is in some way, well, we live in now I need it in Portuguese. Ocidental. Thank you. Western, yeah, Western. We have that Western culture, so of course we have our classical music, but for example, I think it would be very interesting also to challenge our different institutions to make so many other classical music as we have, because, well, you have classical Indian music, even though here in the Western world we have already said that no, that is world music. So in that sense, we have also to think about what we are giving, and not only even to try to reach some families, as you have said, but also to give new things to other families that maybe have never encountered. So, but it's a very, very good question.
I think that goes a bit in line with what you mentioned at some point about representation. So that is needed also in the people that are doing the programs and developing strategies and the whole thing. So that would be, yeah, really important. And if I could go back a little bit to what you mentioned about the exhibition and the height and whatever. Of course, as an exhibition designer, I've been really pushing on the accessibility and reinforcing that accessibility is not a ramp, and it's not just about this height, it's about a lot more. And when you include sign language, when you have braille, and when you think about neurodiversity, when you think about mental health, then you make something accessible. And when we are designing an exhibition, and that's been my struggle during all these years, that if you're designing it from scratch, then you have all the opportunities to design something really accessible. And it might be that some things are not accessible, and that's okay. But usually it's the thinking is more, okay, let's make an exhibition like this, and then let's adapt to this or that. And if you have the chance to design it from scratch, then why not? And a lot of professionals that are involved in designing exhibitions at all sorts of levels, from the concept to the installation, they don't have that awareness. And sometimes the tools or the training, and there is a lot of work to be done there. And then just jumping to the language topic that you mentioned, that you had all these interviews in several languages. And for example, at Heureka, there's a really interesting example that when we had this dinosaur exhibition, there was an option to use this selkokieli. So it's like the simple Finnish, or simplified Finnish. And there was a bit of assessment doing, so evaluation about it. And apparently around 80% of the people noticed that it was there. I've heard from our inspirers or mediators that children were really a lot more engaged in the labels than usual. And also that they also asked like how much this had like been beneficial. So there was like a lot and really, really a lot. I don't know very well how it translated into English. And 20% of the people said that it was better because it was like that. So I think this should be taken as a hint that more language or even less language and more other strategies and other ways of communicating would be really beneficial for exhibitions and for all kinds of events and services and experience. So.
I was actually thinking still about what you said about participation, because many of the projects like that we design equally and so on are many times designed by us white experts in a way. And this is Helsinki City has a fantastic tools to actually have participation as a way to engage people, but I'm not sure if we are actually still reaching out the community. So I think this is one thing, and I would love to have the possibility to make some kind of survey for different communities that what is that they would like to experience, what kind of places to visit and so on. And I think that the exhibition, yes, we live in the middle of exhibitions, and selkokieli is something that we have thought that, you know, for us, Finnish, Swedish and English, which are the sort of official languages, they serve just a little percentage of people. So selkokieli might be sort of, or then no language in some way. So yes.
Yes, that's very interesting. Listening more, and then, and this is what I actually. That was the motivation in my research, because I wanted to hear what the children had to say, and I had to actually work so hard on that, because we always have our own preconceptions and ideas. So when I ask something, there's already an intention in the question I am asking. So it's, of course, I'm not outside this at all, but at least I try to work on my reflecting on my own preconceptions. So how I will ask, but also how I will listen. So for example, in those interviews, I learned so much because it was not only the verbal language, as you can imagine, some children had so little vocabulary in Finnish. The interview used very, basic vocabulary, but still, but it was noticing the body movements, the body language. It was noticing the pauses. So if you ask something and there's a big silence, or it was noticing that they started moving. So you understand, it goes beyond language. It's so much more. But when I say listening, it's all that. And then listening to the voices of those children who didn't want to speak. So why didn't they want to speak? So there might be a reason why they don't want, if they have the possibility. But there were children, so my questions were about music, right? But music is part of life. And so when I asked about music, they started, many of the interviews were so that they started telling me their life. Because we cannot separate arts from life. So I don't know, it's a continuous learning, I feel.
I'm going to read some questions from the Zoom. So if you have any questions, please write them, and also from the audience. So what percentage of Anatalos or Kaisa's staff are immigrants, both educators and producers? We want numbers.
Well, I think under 10, I would say. I mean, it's, yeah. I mean, we have, that's a rough percentage. And then we have different background, but if you think of immigrants, yes, I would say roughly 10.
Out of how many?
Out of 70
Okay.
at the moment. So it's actually, it sounds about right. Yes.
This is awful. I'm really not a good mathematician, so I'm very sorry. But in our case, including teachers, but of course, we have so few teachers comparing to Annandalo and including our staff. So let's say that Finnish born are the minority here. So, but I would say, yeah, I really have to count because our staff, we are 9 of us, and I think only 4 are Finnish born. The rest of us are in some way coming from outer space. And then our teachers, now I have to say that I think they're all born outside Finland. And then of course we could go to all our artists and so on, but please, I really don't remember all of them. But in the sense that of course, because it's part of us and that we really all the time try to have minorities represented in different levels.
We have a comment. As a foreigner parent, I feel I can't participate in my kids' school's life due to language barriers. Do you have any advice about how to see to the schools the idea that I want to be more a participant? So how can we communicate with the schools to a parent that wants to be more active?
I am sorry to hear that. I mean, I'm a parent of 4, so I have sort of, and I have to say that in my, I mean, if I am in a parent role, I have happened to be in schools where the backgrounds are so multicultural that the teachers are always, that's a diverse problem actually. So I would really be in close contact with the principal of the school and be very active and maybe find a parent friend who could help with that. But that should not be a problem in Helsinki in these days, because in some of the areas, maturity of the kids might be from other origin than Finnish. So.
Yeah, reach out to the principal and reach out to make it clear to the teachers. Your
Definitely,
wishes.
yes.
And if I may ask, there's many times in the school, there's a person who takes that role, they can speak different languages and so they can help in communication. So perhaps that's also possible in that particular school. And yeah, so also, if I might say something, is not to feel shy about asking, not to feel shy. Do it because this is the way.
Make yourself heard. Yeah. Be persistent. Would you like to say something?
Yes, I feel so sorry because I also know that we Finns can be a bit, hard in communication and so on. So it might be not a very easy task to actually do, but I would really encourage because there will be somebody at the school staff who can help.
This is a question for you, Prieta. Can you explain what the 5 times 2 refers to?
So 5 times 2 is an educational program at Panelist that's designed for primary schools, and it actually used to also serve kindergartens. But what it means is that if I explain the structure is that school class comes to Annandalo 5 times, so within 5 weeks, 2 hours per each time, and it gives it's about building the children's cultural competence in a way that they can actually learn art in a professional setting. So the reason why 5 times 2 is actually happening in this case in Annandalo is that we can actually provide professional context for the art form. And we have all arts in-house, so we have ceramic studios, we have graphic class, we have all the visual arts, media, movie, photography, dance, circus, theater. So when a class comes to Annandalo, it's divided usually in 3 groups. So at the most 8 kids are working with one artist, and you're following the same art genre for those 5 weeks. So in theater, the kids actually make their own plays. And so it's a very creative way also of teaching. In dance, they do their own choreography. In music, they mostly make their own music. And a wonderful thing is that in the last 5 times 2 time, the kids actually share what they have learned. So they go, all the other kids go to see what the theater group is doing and so on. And so they get actually a real feeling of art because they have produced something. And we have fantastic literature teachers. It's called sanataide in Finnish, and sometimes the kids that go to sanataide think that, oh, this is so boring. But then when they actually find out what it is, that they are actually creating stories, they might be doing, so it has, so what it can give, it gives the first touch for a kid to an art form that she or never has even thought to encounter. And even if he doesn't do anything with that experience in the future, there is something. And many actually kids find out that they like an art form and want to continue. And this is something that we try now to develop, that if we provide this kind of experience, that how could we actually serve the rest of it? But this is the structure.
Yeah, it gives so much exposure to a child. And I feel like one theme that we talked about in the beginning was about exposure. Exposure changes your own thought process and how you see the world. So Sarah, you were interested in the 5 times 2. Please, to anybody who's interested in this program, you need to tell your children's teacher to sign up. I only know about it because of personal experience, and I waited in line over a year to get into the program. So here again, you have to be persistent because, for example, in my school, they didn't necessarily promote this program, but I personally reached out to Anatolo because I wanted my kids to have this.
One big resource what we actually have a 5 times 2 coordinator in Annandalo that has basically every primary school in Helsinki has a coordinator for this. So there should be a teacher at the school who knows. So,
Yeah.
but if not, then it's Roy Ruuskanen at Annandalo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. The life of the teacher is inundated with so many things. So, but yeah, it's about prioritizing too. That was my priority. Another question. Oh, another question about 5 times 2. Taidekurssien tarkoituksena on tukea koulujen omaa kasvatusta, opetusta tarjoittavat Anantalo, Kanatalo, Maamitalo, Store ja Vuotalo. Kyllä.
Ja Kaisa.
Yes, so there are all our cultural centers under Helsinki City umbrella are actually providing this. So the idea is that the schools can actually get to the closest center. You can, Anantalo gets.
Sorry, could you just translate the question?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry.
So the question was that Anantalo's the 5x2 program is actually giving tools for art education at schools, and that all the cultural centers in Helsinki are actually providing that. So I think that he or she was referring to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for making that clear, Tatiana. What are the actions you are going to take in the near future to introduce permanent cultural workers in Anatalo? I'll repeat it again.
I understand the question. So Anantalo is part of Helsinki City, and so the permanent positions are quite well aligned within the larger scale, I would say. And at the moment, the number of positions is 13, and that is how it is now. And then the artist teachers, for instance, are always employed yearly 4 terms, and this is now the situation. And as we have now the 5x2 kind of evaluation going on and so on, so we'll evaluate this all the time.
Is there institutional racism in cultural centers in Helsinki? And if there is, how is it possible to change this? Thank you for this question.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. I cannot say there is not in some way, and especially when we see our contents different. And now talking very broadly, I don't want to say that it's only about our culture centers under the Helsinki City. I think it's unfortunately still a very sad reality we have through art and culture and many other sectors. So yes, in some way. And I know that many would not like to use the word racism because it feels so strong, but it is in many ways. Was there any, what was else? Yes, I said there is. Totally, I cannot say no. Was there anything else?
What can we do
Can we
to
do?
change this?
Yeah, well, once again, I think the matter of representation, which has to be at all levels. But then we have not to talk only about racism, because now we have to understand that racism is just one form of inequity. So if we want to have an equal society in some way in all the sectors, it's not only about racism, it's about so many other problems we have. Well, thinking we have been just celebrating Pride, and I'm sure that all of you are very aware what has happened, this gate at the National Theatre. So unfortunately, there is still a lot of lacking of information, lacking of knowledge, but of course it's very difficult to have the knowledge. First of all, the institutions themselves don't reflect about their own work, don't understand that. And for example, I hate the thing to say that the world is changing. No, has always been like this, but maybe now we are only speaking it more out loud. And now that we are speaking it more out loud, so now there is a possibility also to do something about it and to learn more about it. But then, which I feel that it's also another challenge, that many institutions think that the most easiest way how to solve it is, so, okay, let's take some immigrants backgrounded or some sexual minorities or whatever, and then you come and you take care of our issues. And that is also not the idea, because as an institution, and when you have the power to do many decisions, you also have the power to change. So, and of course, well, I've already listened to so many different excuses. How can you get out of this talk, which is like, well, you know, but there are problems of budgeting. Yeah, we all have the same. So there is a lot of challenges, of course, but we cannot say, and especially now regarding us working under the city of Helsinki once more, serving each Helsinkian people, then we really have to make much more work. And starting with politicians, because remember also that we don't also make the only decisions as workers, we also are working under a political system. So first of all, I think maybe people should vote and try, of course, through that, because it's very important. Everyone can vote and can in some way make difference in our politics inside the city, for example. And then, of course, then the matter of representation, not only in arts, we think in all levels, I think. Of course, we have a great politics in Helsinki that we really want in some way to hire more and more different kind of minorities, and by different kind, once again, thinking about people with disability, blah, 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 blah. So I'm not focusing only on immigrant background. But unfortunately then our own structures have also to change. And when we are talking, in our case, from the city of Helsinki, which is the biggest employer in whole Finland. So if we would be an enterprise, we would be the biggest enterprise. So we are 40,000 workers. So you have to also imagine the structure level we have. It's really so enormous that we just cannot change from one day to the other. But we are giving some steps which I feel that are very important, but we are very far from ending with that question. Yes, I'm sorry. So I can really talk a lot about this here.
If I can bring the children's perspective, I was very sad to hear in some of the interviews that children were not interested in learning the native language and taking, the lessons that the Helsinki Hub is offering. They just said, I'm not interested. And it was sad. Because why a child would not be interested in learning more about their own culture, about their own language, how to write it or the grammar, or to get expert in another language, because of course they learn Finnish. There's so much behind. So that also answers the question, I think.
If I could just comment also on the children's perspective, I think that on the note of what we can do is not just about creating this awareness to racism or whatever type of discrimination it is, but also to make these kids want to act on it. A bit like there's big movement around climate change. And how can we make these kids also want to fight this and take action? So I would say that that's where we can try to do something, and all levels or all types of institutions.
Yes, I think also
the fact is that the city is just one actor in a way, and actually the cultural centers are part of culture and leisure sector. And there's actually an analysis of an ecosystem going on at the moment where we are evaluating that what services should city provide and what the others. And when we're talking that if Anna should have more positions, I would love. It would be fantastic. But then you have to look at the whole picture that where should the positions actually be? And then if you think of the kind of structures as Katja was referring to be in a position in Helsinki city, you need to have some language skills and so on. So I think as you were saying, our structures need to change a lot, that we can have more of a representation. And I think that that's the first key if you are thinking how to how the kids could, you were asking at some point that how could we improve children participation and so on, and it's clearly also through representation, but also a very basic thing that all the kind of IT tools that we use, they're all in Finnish. So there are so many things that so I think that at the moment you can actually change the system from outside and kind of be in collaboration with the bigger institutions. And I think that Helsinki City is a big one, and I know that there's a lot of will to be the maailman toimivin kaupunki. That's our strategical aim, but it takes a lot to change something from 80s into 2020 in a year.
Yes.
I work for the city of Vantaa now for the children's household services, but my background is in Helsinki and in Hannantalo. But that was what I was thinking that Erika brought up, because I was thinking all the time diversity and public service. You know, it should be so clear that there is. And of course, then those services where we reach everybody, there is diversity because everybody is there present, but you have to be, like Erika said, be honest and careful that you really mean everybody, not just 99%, but everybody with the program that you read. But then I was also thinking that maybe this is the structure of these cultural institutions, that we think that there is an institution that provides something to the audience. And it's not so much that anymore. It's more like it's not this dualistic thing, but it's producing together. And then we need to look at the ecosystem and see how that could change the whole picture. And I think the festival and the organizations like this are very good example of this. It's not just us producing something to them, but it's us doing it together.
Yeah, and last Monday at Atheneum there was the closing of Avals-projekti, and please read the research yourself. But I remember from the talk somebody confronting exactly this question: how to change structural racism that is found, for example, here. And one of the solutions that they are looking into is changing lessening the language requirements that you can clearly learn on the job as well, but you have the skills, and if it's language, then that's a separate issue. So I was really happy to hear that from a legal standpoint, but then, thank you. But then also going back to agency, that people who do the hiring, they can still hire who they feel is best. So it's also coming from both sides.
But one thing also that we have to say about hiring, which that I have to say, very proud of being part of Helsinki City because we are now having a piloting of this anonymous recruiting, which I really hope it's going to help us tackle this racism question that is not only connected with language, so other aspects in the racism. So in that sense, I'm really happy that we are now doing it, which is, it's not a new thing, but of course, for a big institution it is, or a big city it is, so we are going there.
I'm going to read the last question. Can you share some of the tools, platforms, or programs Helsinki City has to encourage children and young people's political, cultural, and social activities and participation?
Another half hour.
Go for it.
Please do go for it.
Our youth sector is actually fantastic on that. So they have many programs that have. So in order to get in touch with those, just go to the closest youth center in your area. There is Pulssi, and there are all sorts of things are changing on that sector too. But what I would say on a very sort of grassroots level, this is what we are trying now to do, that we are trying to think in Annandalo on a very small scale, that how could we actually activate, because this is a very big question, how to actually, is it just making a questionnaire at what we would like to, so if you really want to think how to participate, children and young people, you really need to have a longer term and longer project on that. But I would say that in sort of everyday life, there are a lot of different programs that do that in Helsinki City.
Don't we also have the participatory budgeting for youth?
Exactly. Yes.
There's so many.
Yeah, exactly. And even the participatory budgeting for everyone is possible for young people. So you can actually, but this is again about preaching that, have you understood that there is this kind of platform where you can actually make ideas what there should be and so on. So I think that our communicating matters are something that we need to develop a lot.
Agreed.
I am so grateful for this opportunity, and thank you for sharing and giving also concrete tools of how to be inclusive. I think that was for me the biggest takeaway. So thank you very much, and thank you again for the festival for organizing this. Does anybody have any last words they would like to share?
Well, I have been also working with Childre at Annandalo, and I think that you are brave professionals doing the impossible possible, and I really wish all the courage. It's very important work that you do, and I think that this kind of this discussion, to have this kind of panel, and I hope that people, there have felt sort of intensity here. These are really not the easiest times for us, everyone. So I really appreciate making an effort to making this kind of panel even within these kind of circumstances. So thank you.
And thank you to the Zoom participants for being so active. Your questions had more of an impact than you can imagine. So thank you.